Story time. I'm going to talk about how my grandfather died. Now, my grandfather he had so many different females, but he had 10 children. And out of the 10, it was my dad. Now, the problem was he was a father to the eldest bunch, but then he had four younger bunches, which was my aunt, then my dad, and his two younger brothers. When he had those four, he was already 50 years old. And I guess raising other children, I think he kind of just gave up, didn't care, and could just care less. So he basically gives up on them. My dad tells me that, he grows up on top of his mother, which is my grandmother. She was schizophrenic. My dad realized that when he was just 10 years old. So at a young age, he raises himself and my uncles, his younger brothers. My aunt, since she was a girl, she was raised by the other siblings. My dad would tell me that, back in the country, he would have to walk maybe 10 miles just to get water. They would have to beg people for money. They would sell cans, like metal and stuff. If the older siblings, which were my uncles and aunts, if they had a place to stay for them, it would work sometimes. But for the most part, it was struggle. Now, finally, I guess my grandpa had moved to America, and they couldn't, my dad and his uncles couldn't stay in the country. So they left the country and sent them to America with an older sibling, which is my aunt, one of my older aunts. But my older aunt she's hanging on the best she can. So my dad tells me that him and his brothers find him in a bar. And they say, hey, Dad, can we get some money? Because there's no food at the house. My grandpa gives them about $5. This is the early 80s. So $5, it did what it could do. Gives them $5, and he tells them literally, all right, now leave me the fuck alone. And my dad tells me that was the last time we saw him. And they were about 11 at that time. So later on, my dad's about 18, and his uncles are 17 and 16. My dad gets a call, and they say, hey, you probably don't care, but your dad died. So my dad's like, all right, I guess what happened? And they say, well, all the girls he was out here. He was smashing in the country, and he was smashing out here in America. He was going bar hopping, smashing anything he could see. My grandpa, I believe he'd pay for pussy and pay for alcohol. I think that was it. So he ended up catching HIV. And at this time, from what my dad tells me, they didn't really know how to deal with this. So he goes, they believe if they chop his cock off, the virus will stop spreading. So, and then after that, I think he survived 3 more months after that. They told me that his last 3 months of his life, he had no penis, basically. And, to some, it's a funny story. To others, it's not. To me, it's hilarious because he didn't care for my dad or my uncles, and he probably wouldn't have cared for me. And it's oddly enough, they tell my dad that he was his favorite child. Funny story, huh?